What's good, you guys? Your boy Robert Horry here, representing Horry Nation Sports Podcast. Hope you guys have been enjoying the playoffs. Hope you guys have been enjoying all the games. It's been fun and pretty much entertaining. But I had to do this video because I had somebody on one of the live streams that I was listening to trying to make the point that Robert Horry is a Hall of Famer, and the reason why this person said that he was a Hall of Famer is because of the fact that he won 7 NBA championships and he was pretty much played a major role of those championship teams, and he basically should belong in there. And I counter back by saying no, he should not be a Hall of Famer, and I explained X, Y, Z, and all that other stuff, and he pretty much lost it. But I'm gonna go in depth with this video here because I think I did a video of this I think a year ago or two, and it was pretty much a broad perspective. But now this video right here is going to be much more fine tuned this time around because there's been a lot of people that have been pretty much saying that Robert Horry should belong into the Hall of Fame. I know that one of his former coaches, Rudy Tomjanovich, when he was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame, said in his Hall of Fame induction speech that Robert Horry should needs to come into the Hall of Fame. But I'm here to tell you guys off the rip that it's not going to happen. And Robert Horry is not a Hall of Famer. And it's pretty much simple as this. I respect Robert Horry. I respect the fact of how, an excellent role player that he was throughout his entire career. I mean, when you look back at the championships that he's won with the Rockets, the Lakers, and the Spurs, he was a significant contributor to all 7 of those championship teams throughout his entire career. And he was the guy that you can count on off the bench or in a starting position at either small forward or power forward to defend against the very best, small forward or power forward at that particular time. And he was a very good 3-point shooter and a very good defender. And he was one of the most unselfish basketball players that you could ever ask for. Why? Because he pretty much was a guy that didn't demand, shots, that he was the kind of guy that that pretty much didn't have to, request that many shots, even though he was pretty much pretty good at that. But at the same time, he was not that type of player. But as an excellent of a role player he was, and he made some of the greatest game-winning shots of his career. One of my all-time favorite ones is with the one against the Sacramento Kings in the 2002 Western Conference Finals, after Vlade Divac slapped the ball away from Shaquille O'Neal. It was pretty much a perfect bounce pass straight to Robert Horry at the top of the key for the 3-point shot, and just it was nothing but net. There was no room for error, and he pretty much nailed it right down the middle. To this day, it's still one of my favorite game-winning shots of all time. But let's get to this nit and gritty here. For people that are pretty much saying that he's a Hall of Famer based on the fact that he's won 7 championships, here's the logic of this whole situation. You're right. He was a great role player in those championship teams when he won those titles. But here's what people are missing in this whole situation. The man is not a Hall of Famer for simple reasons. Number one, he was never the main go-to guy in any of those championship teams. All right. He was a type of player that was pretty much an unselfish player that would sometimes pass up open shots. And he was a type of guy that, would do the little things, but was not a huge scorer. All right. Number two, he didn't have enough individual accomplishments to warrant Hall of Fame consideration. The only individual accomplishment that he ever had in the NBA is when he was pretty much all rookie second team as a rookie in 1993. When you look at his college resume, he was second team All SEC in 1992, third team All SEC in 1990. He was all defensive team in the SEC in 1992 when he was playing in Alabama. So what we have to understand here is the Hall of Fame is an individual accomplishment accolade, which means that you have to not just dominate of your era. Your accomplishments and how you performed in your era has to duplicate how much of a significant player you were. With Robert Horry, when you look at his stats in particular, only 3 of his 4 years, he averaged double figures. I mean, his highest average of scoring in his career was only 12 points a game in the 95-96 season. Okay. For the majority of his career, he only averaged 7 points throughout his career. His free throw percent was 72%, and he shot 34% from three and 42% from the field. So, yeah, he wasn't a great high percentage shooter, but you couldn't leave him open when it counted most. But he was never an all-team NBA selection on the first team, the second team, or the third team. He was never an all-defensive selection team. All right. He never made it to an all-star appearance. He never won an MVP. All right. He never had any individual accomplishments that pretty much warrants Hall of Fame induction. The reason why people like T Mac were able to get into the Hall of Fame is because T Mac was one of the greatest scorers of the 2000s. I mean, there was a good 2-year stretch where he led the NBA in scoring. This guy was pretty much unguardable. The guy was a scoring machine at the highest level. The same for Vince Carter, too. Look, I've even done the video in the past before saying that Vince Carter was not a Hall of Famer. But after relooking at his resume from his rookie year in his prime years, right? And considering the fact that Vince Carter throughout his career played 20 seasons in the NBA, he was a 7-time All-Star and was literally responsible for reviving the dunk contest, right? And more importantly, in particular, when you look at his point production, he scored over 25,000 points throughout his career. 25,728 points throughout his career. So, yeah, the man does belong into the Hall of Fame. And more importantly, in particular, he was one of the main resurgents of building the Toronto Raptors franchise to what it is now. You can't talk about the story of the Toronto Raptors without mentioning Vince Carter. But I digress. The point here is, guys, is that as great of a player Robert Horry was, again, he never had the individual accomplishments to go along with those championship, rings that he had. Now, yes, he has 7 championships, but let's keep in mind: are we going to sit here and say that, you know, say that Casey Jones, despite the fact he's a Hall of Famer, do we really consider him a great player in his own right? Yeah, we do, because he played for the Boston Celtics and was a huge. He was also an all-star too, and played a significant role of those championship teams. Right? This is what I'm trying to tell everybody. Stop stop looking at the nostalgia of what he did and really use your mind, use your smarts about a player's resume and what they did. And I took a lot of flack even when I was on FYF Sports Debates when I talked about that Chris Webber is a Hall of Famer. Why? Because he had the individual accomplishments, and more importantly, he had the stats. And when he was at his peak in Sacramento, he was pretty much one of the top 5 best power forwards of his time. The guy was a versatile player, and let me tell you something. Robert Horry can attest to that too, because he had to guard a prime Chris Webber the majority of the time. So at the end of the day, you know, we got to stop with this whole nostalgia thing. We can always respect, players and what they were able to do. But I even heard people say that Robert Horry was far superior than Draymond Green. Now, look, I know there's a lot of people in around these YouTube basketball streets that don't like Draymond Green. But come on. That is completely asinine if you're ever going to say that. Because Draymond Green is an all-league defender, multi-time All-Star, and multi-time champion, and was also Defensive Player of the Year. That's something Robert Horry never did throughout his entire career. So we need to stop with this whole notion that Robert Horry belongs in the Hall of Fame because he won 7 championships. No other player has ever done that other than Bill Russell. You're right. That's true. But at the same time, the Basketball Hall of Fame is your entire resume from start to finish. And yes, Robert Horry has those championship rings, but he doesn't have enough individual accomplishments to warrant any consideration for the Hall of Fame. And if he is allowed to get in, this will open up the door for other players that have had the similar stats to Robert Horry to have their names included into the Hall of Fame. So it's ridiculous, and I don't agree with that whatsoever. I still respect him as a great role player for what he did for his career. But at the same time, he doesn't have, again, the individual accolades to warrant any conversation for the Hall of Fame. And I think that's where people need to just hold the brakes and really look at his entire career from start to finish. So, again, I still respect him for what he did, but at the same time, we got to put this nonsense to bed. And that's my 2 cents of the whole thing. And I want to know what you got. What you guys want to know what you guys think about it. Do you believe that Robert Horry belongs in the Hall of Fame, and why is that? Or do you not believe he's in the Hall of Fame, or do you think you have a different answer to what I said? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. And with that, I'm out. Peace.